r/AskReddit. What's the most NSFW thing you've seen happen in a workplace? A male client jumped on me and started licking me everywhere. I work at a vet though, so it's okay. Once I caught one of the cleaning ladies getting banged by our barman in a refrigerated cell. They were both naked and going at it while under 0 degrees Celsius. A well-qualified female was promoted to be a line supervisor at a manufacturing facility I worked at years ago. One of the men on the line was rather upset that he'd have to be reporting to a woman. When the newly promoted line supervisor was making her first review inspection of the line, he dropped his pants and underpants and waved his dick at her in defiance. Her first administrative act as supervisor was to terminate his employment. I walked into the office kitchen and had a female work colleague take off her top and asked me what I thought of her breasts. I was a bit blindsided by this and said, "I've only come for a cup of tea. This girl is young enough to be my daughter." A few days later, she came into my office, wiggled her bum at me and asked me what I thought of her bum. That girl just doesn't take a hint. Obviously she just needs to dress up as a teabag because that's all you'll come for. Worked in an emergency room. And I can tell you that a good number of the nurses and paramedics were having affairs and just having rampant sex with each other. I remember one specific time walking by a patient room and just hearing X sounds. A few minutes later, a disheveled nurse and firefighter came strolling back to the nurses' station. A different type of NSFW. One of the physicians was busted for having alcohol in his big gulp while working. Another time we discovered one nurse in the bathroom half passed out with a needle in her arm. County hospitals are awesome. We had a girl give her boyfriend, who was fully cathed, a handy. His heart rate went up and when the nurse went in to check on him she got quite the surprise. We had a row of 10 or so porta potties that started swaying uncontrollably. Turns out a couple decided that a porta potty is a discreet place to hook up. I worked in a cemetery for years. I remember one of the funeral directors was banging a receptionist and one night she met him out in the wall crypts and the security guard caught them with my homie's pants down. NSFW and hilarious. Side note, he was engaged to somebody else who worked there. The fireworks were legendary. Do tell. He bribed the security guard not to tell, but his GF eventually found out. She wasn't really big on self-esteem and forgave him. But one day the receptionist said good morning to her and the GF basically told her in the middle of the lobby, "Itch, don't you ever look at me in my ducking eyes or I'll RIP yours out." Once I walked in on one of my patients having sex with her boyfriend. She had given birth, vaginally, 6 hours earlier. Worked at a place that had a boardroom that overlooked the factory. The boardroom windows were covered in mirror vinyl and usually it's brighter in the factory than the boardroom so you can't see in from the factory. After work it's getting dark so the lights in the boardroom are brighter than the factory so the effect is reversed and you can see everything in the boardroom from the factory but can't see the factory from inside the boardroom. That's when the CEO walks into the boardroom and ducks a receptionist on the boardroom table with a whole bunch of factory workers watching. This is great. Did anyone cheer or clap? We caught a 60-year-old rich, married, white lady blowing a homeless guy in our bathroom during Fantasy Fest while her husband waited outside. In her defense, I don't think she knew he was homeless. I managed a bar 2 years ago. I had this girl that bartended for me who would go missing on camera all the time. I had them cameras everywhere inside. She'd just disappear for half an hour at a time. I investigated. I was pretty close with a lot of the regulars. Small, family-owned place in a suburb. And came to find out that she had been UHH, offering X for money, soliciting X from behind my bar. She was gone shortly thereafter. I couldn't fire her for something that I couldn't prove. I ended up letting her go for neglecting to fulfill her duties as a bartender. She was written up for multiple occasions of leaving the bar customers unattended and that was enough to get her the hell out. I don't know if that could somehow fall back on me or the bar, but I was not interested in finding out. Friend was a plumber. He was installing a water heater in the roof with his assistant. He was in the roof and the assistant was fetching him tools and passing them up the ladder. After a while he asked his assistant for something and realized he wasn't there. So he climbed down the ladder to see where he was. Found him ducking the homeowner's maid on the kitchen table. They'd just met about 1 hour earlier. Walked in on my boss boning the HR director in his office. My next review and raise were the best I ever had. I'm reporting this to HR. Whispers in HR director's ear mid-coitus you're having X with the boss. I'm a teacher and one day walking past the headmaster office I heard some very distinctive moans. Well, if they're the headmaster it's bound to be good. A guy was watching on his laptop during anti-sexual harassment training. Work in a hospital. Had a patient come in for vaginal pain. Worked her up and positioned her in the stirrups so the doctor could come in and do a quick pelvic exam. Right after I did that, a critical patient came in that required the doc's attention for a while. After about 20 minutes I went back into the pelvic exam patient's room to apologize for the wait and put the stirrups back down so she could lay normally until the doctor had time to examine her. I walked into her boyfriend on his knees in front of her eating her out, asked him what the hell he was doing and he told me he just couldn't resist with her in that position. I escorted him to the waiting room and told security he wasn't allowed back in. Turns out she had chlamydia. Shocker. I walked in on 2 co-workers having X. The guy just said hey, what's up like it was nothing. Sadly it didn't work out for them. He pulled a gun on her in the parking lot a few months later. Honorable mention to the time I caught an employee getting fingered by a customer in a stairwell. Guy took a it from a 100 feet lattice tower. When you hear laying hot asphalt from a lineman, you scatter LOL, aka the sky dump. I worked at a Nissan dealership located at a busy intersection in my city back in the early 2000s. One of the younger car salesmen was trying to sell a new car to a woman who looked to be in her 40s. It was going well. They were working on closing the deal. So I take a break and walk to the back car lot for a smoke to find the salesman wedged between 2 cars amongst a row of cars with the woman he was selling a car to on her knees giving him a blowjob. I was in complete shock. She never stopped and he just smiled and gave me a thumbs up. I am a 36-year-old female and still think of this one often enough. Ugh. Did he finish the sell? And if so, did he get a big cut for finishing it? At my gym, a hired trainer ran out of the bathroom butt naked, dick in hand, stroking and screaming at the top of his lungs. He blew the most ridiculous sized load I've ever seen on the preacher curl machine, then fell over and passed out. The police and paramedics had to be called, and after they took the guy and did what they needed to do with the scene, the gym manager had to clean up the massive load off the machine. I skipped my class and just hung out there because I wanted to see how it all played out. A woman I worked with could be a little restless. We worked evenings and were relatively unsupervised. She occasionally would do exercises to burn off energy. She did a handstand against the wall once and her titty popped out. I don't think she knew I saw, but I saw your titty D. He went up to a couple in the bar I was covering to ask if they wanted a picture. Woman is short of breath and the guy just says no. I ask the woman if she's okay and she nods and I walk off. I look back and see the guy furiously fingering her under the table. Chick I worked with showed us her boobs. That was pretty nice of her. A hot little 4 feet 6 inches tall girl I worked with used to take her tits out to show off her nipple rings. A bonding day for the entire production staff. It's basically 4-6 hours at a hotel with access to the pool, gym, sports fields and a few organized activities that are aimed to raise morale. Now you're not supposed to bring alcohol. In fact, it's technically forbidden. But as long as you're not a complete moron, the management look the other way. Walk into a toilet to see 1 woman and 3 guys going at it. It was definitely consensual. I wasn't the first to see it and wasn't the last. Too drunk to realize that they should probably lock the door at least. Management looked the other way. I worked in a crusty movie theater when I was an innocent 16-year-old. Here is a summary of the it I saw people my age doing. Storing liquor bottles in the ice chest. Snorting painkillers off the sink. Dipping balls or spitting in the popcorn. Workers having X in theaters closets parking lot. Cleaners popping X before their shift. Smoking weed behind the dumpster. Manager selling drugs for employees to do on their shift. Employee parties held in our 25-year-old manager's trailer. He supplied the alcohol for all the high schoolers. Cans of graffiti remover next to popcorn bags lying around the back. It was common for them to be taken out and huffed. This coworker was really into me, I just didn't like her like that, but I guess she got desperate, so she goes to where I'm working in the building and she literally just flashes her tits in front of me in the middle of the day and walks away. I worked with a chick with big boobs, but everything else about her was meh. Most of the guys were into her but I wasn't. Had a girlfriend at the time, so she would flash me to, I guess, try to make me fall under the same spell she had the rest of the guys under. She was weird. Never underestimate the power of indifference, especially around people who derive their self-worth through the validation of others. People handling asbestos without any of the necessary safety equipment, from cleaning up a burnt out building. I clean pools over the summer and apparently the client didn't tell their teenage son we were coming because when we got there we found him asleep by the pool but naked with a little boner. I have never seen someone run inside faster. You saved him from a horrific sunburn, honestly. One of my co-workers loved to wear miniskirts and go commando. I know this because our cubicle desks didn't have vanity panels, and her desk faced mine across an aisle. I didn't spend my time trying to look, mind you, but when she got on her hands and knees one day to check the wiring on her PC, it was hard not to notice. She was also either a natural redhead, or very thorough. She knew. Small company. Had this woman in her 30s working in accounting. Not very attractive. Heavy smoker with a voice to match. A bit trashy. But she was funny, friendly and generally a good person. She found some photos of me online, which I guess she liked. She showed them to the co-workers, I guess for its and giggles. I walk in, she shows me a printout of one of the photos. The HR lady is standing right next. The unattractive woman says very loudly to me, "Let's have X." HR lady's eyes go. Then she just shook her head and walked away defeated. I laughed it off. Didn't have X with her. I'm gonna be that guy. There's no way in hell that would be acceptable if the genders were reversed. Ducking like and subscribe.